The castle has been rather empty recently. Usually we have at least a couple of guests who frequent this establishment telling tales from the far reaches of this land. But recently there's been a lull. I suppose that's good, at least for the travelers, not having to worry about a new homunculi coming to take what little they have left. So when I was approached with this story, I was hesitant to record it. I conferred with the castle and had verified the claims legitimate of his word. This man was not lying. But nonetheless, it was a bit hard to believe at first that so much mass could be accumulated under one figure. I did not expect it to be so lethal either. Something so destructive, but reasoning to a degree. The only reason I am able to record this creature is because the being that came across it managed to have excess sustenance. Perhaps it was a miracle, or perhaps it was a precaution that paid off in more than full, as he now rests in the residential wing of this castle as his reward, himself being protected from the scourge that comes in many forms in this plane. I don't want to get off topic. To describe the magnitude of this creature is difficult. I rarely like to give these key definitions, as everything in this plane is in constant mutation. So, I will start with the story. From what I understood from the being that came to me with this story is as he told me. A field of long twisting strings, passive in nature, but resilient all the same, lay in impact in the ground, flattened, humanoid yet misshapen, if you will. The weight indented the ground with a soft curve, revealing the dry, matte soil beneath it. Evidently it started to crawl, small lengths at a time, one appendage after another, pulling the body forward. Belongings, presumably those of this man, littered the trail on both sides, a picture of a human, hairless, in a long white gown, looking frail. The slightly misshapen path starts to grow. Each limb grows in mass as the trail progresses. It starts to gain width. The nature once only being trampled underneath the movement is now sucked from the ground. No longer is a man recognizable. By the time you reach the end of the trail, there is just a mass, its eyes pained, yet yearning for what became obvious. Near its base, being dissolved through its gelatinous body, was another creature that must have failed to avoid its reach. Realizing its new company, its gaze locked with the gaze of the being who took great measure in keeping its distance. The mass's mouth contorted, searching for words that it did not have control over. Face shifting under massive amounts of flesh that became translucent under the harsh sun. A coherent statement, never leaving its mouth. It lost interest in communication. With magnificent speed, it had closed the gap between itself and the being in too short a time to measure. Now in close proximity, the body could be seen heaving, untold amounts of energy compiled and drained in order to meet face to face with the being that would soon become its meal. It was clear there was no real emotion behind its eyes, only analytics determining the difficulty of consumption. Fear pulsated through the being's body, a primal instinct demanding reaction. In a moment of panic, the being once again made eye contact with the mass. Behind the glossy gelatin that made up most of its head, it saw something. A moment of hesitation. However, I would not depend of this hesitation of this mass to escape should you have the misfortune of interacting with this creature. Until I can confirm these sources, we must simply speculate it was an irregularity. However, with this momentary chance of escape, the being loosened 2 provisions of meat from its body, the result of a successful hunt. The mass, presumably understanding which was easier to capture, gave no chase when the being fled. The being took one last look back at its potential killer. Its meal now finished, it had restarted its desolate trail, the start of which had already begun to regrow, with new organics replacing the death that had resided there shortly prior. And life carried on, the encounter that had just taken place, already being grown over. Until next time.